Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2021 Tourette Association of America Virtual Conference. My name is Amanda Talty, and I'm the President and CEO of the Tourette Association of America. It's an honor for me to kick off this weekend's events. We're hosting over 2,000 people from around the globe this weekend. The theme of this event is working together and living better. But what does that really mean? To me, it means taking advantage of the opportunity to really engage with one another through over 60 highly engaging educational sessions or through the open discussions hosted in the virtual lounge. It means listening and learning from the many inspiring personal stories that will be woven throughout this forum and discovering new strategies to implement in your daily lives. Most importantly, though, it means understanding that you are not alone. I don't know about you, but all of us at the TAA are looking forward to getting back together in person. The 2022 conference will be in Minneapolis, and you can look for more details about this event soon. We will be celebrating the organization's 50th anniversary, and we do hope that you will all join us. We're pleased to offer events like the virtual conference for free, but it does come at a cost to the association. Through private funding and sponsorships, these events are able to come to life. So if you find value in attending these types of events and this conference in particular, please consider making a financial gift to support these efforts by visiting our website. It is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce one of our 2021 Gala honorees as he shares a special message with us tonight. Please welcome Tim Howard.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It is an honor to be here with each of you as we kick off such a monumental event. My name is Tim Howard, and I'm a former professional soccer player and currently a studio analyst for NBC Sports. I'd like to take a moment to share with you the importance of the Tourette Syndrome Association of America. Breaking down barriers, raising awareness, and providing resources and hope for our community is crucial. Families who are impacted by Tourette syndrome and tic disorders know all too well how difficult it can be to navigate this on their own. As you attend this weekend's events, please take advantage of all that's available to you. The theme of this conference is working together and living better. And while we may be apart, this has been designed with ample connectivity moments to facilitate just that. I know all too well the struggle about growing up with Tourette syndrome, but more importantly, how vital connecting with others who were just like me could actually be. I am truly blessed to have had success on and off the field and in my family life. That doesn't mean I didn't have obstacles to overcome. It took hard work, patience, and perseverance. In October of this year, I will be honored at the Tourette Syndrome Association of America's Gala, and I couldn't be more humbled by this recognition. I hope you'll join me in supporting this tremendous organization as we look forward to another 50 years of devoted service to our community. Thank you.
Tim could not join us this evening to be live and in person, but we're so grateful for his wonderful message, and we really do look forward to honoring him this October, so we hope you all will join us. Now, let me introduce our fantastic panel host. Ben Brown, host of Tourette's podcast, is a loyal Tourette ambassador and friend who joins me in opening this incredible conference. Ben?
Hey, everybody. Just want to say thanks for letting me do this. I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun. And, you know, the saying goes around, and you see it on social media a lot, that Tourette is me, but it's not all of me. And I guess that's to say it influences us in so many ways, but it doesn't dictate everything that we are. You know, we're still individuals. And I'd like to kind of start off getting to know a couple panelists that we have here, what their big moments have been without any mention of Tourette. You know, we'll work toward that, but we'll kind of tie it all in and just identify ourselves as individuals without talking about Tourette yet, because, you know, we're more than just that. So I'd like to introduce you first to Ade Smith. He's a TV presenter, he's a writer and podcaster, and he's known for his expertise and appreciation of wine and spirits and around the world, really. maybe foremost via the Amazon Prime TV series, The Three Drinkers, which is fantastic if you haven't checked it out. And we have another panelist named Britney Wolf. She's a YouTuber, interviewer, public speaker, vlogger, and author known for helping people accept themselves and become more appreciative of our differences. And I've benefited from her. We're all good friends. They're two of my favorites. And I think, do we have you guys here? Are you guys on?
Hello, 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 hello.
There's Aidy.
Hello.
And there's Britney. Okay. So I think the way that we can start is to kind of do a quick round of questions about, everyday life or great moments or memories or, so we can hear you as individuals, and then we'll get a little bit deeper. Aidy, let's start with you. You have fans around the world who know you as an expert in drinks, and as that goes, I think we can all safely assume that, you've had some of the finest in the world. So my question for you is, what is the worst drink you've ever had?
Oh, wow. Okay, right. The worst drink I've ever had. Okay, series 1, we're filming and we were at a distillery over in Scotland and someone approached me and said, you want to try something totally weird? I said, absolutely. It was a whiskey which was aged in old fish herring casks. So literally a whiskey aged in old fish casks for about 18 months. Absolutely disgusting.
That sounds like an experience. Okay. So Britney, about you, I know that you're well traveled and that your husband and your husband and you like to travel. We're not telling you that. Where are you going when all this, the pandemic stuff seems to be kind of winking at optimism? Where are you headed?
Oh man, I won't lie. We have been searching all kinds of vacation spots. There's been a lot of great places we've been. And it's hard to not want to go back, but we want to keep traveling and finding new places to go. So that's the hard part, is we love these places, but we want to keep seeing everything. I will say we both got our vaccines last month and we ended up going to Anna Maria Island. So that was one of our first things. Cool. But we are hoping to travel back to Hawaii next year and maybe visit another island. I took a surfing lesson with a dog on the last trip. So that was pretty hard to beat. And it's really hard, as most people that know me, I love dogs so much. That's really hard not to go back to, but that's our next big trip that we're hoping for.
So these next few questions are going to be lightning round. We're just going to get to them, and then we're going to talk a little bit more deeply and a little bit more appropriately about where we're headed. So Aidy, if you could pick one fictional character to travel with, who would it be?
Paddington Bear, because he likes marmalade and I love marmalade. So I have a very good marmalade margarita recipe actually as well. So I would share that with Paddington.
That's a good answer. Britney, what's the best app on your phone?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna sound lame, but probably like my streaming apps and my podcast app. It's the most used for sure.
Aidy, what's the best snack to unwind with?
Cheetos. You can't get them in the UK. So when I come to the US, my suitcase is full with more than just Californian wine.
Britney, if you could make one thing illegal, what would it be?
I might make some enemies out of this one, but honestly, probably smoking cigarettes. I can't stand the smell and it hits me. I'm not a smoker, so it hits me right in the face. Don't like it.
Okay, so 2 more questions here. Aidy, worst advice you've ever been given?
Okay. I fell in love with the US when I was at high school, went to university, had a placement year, and I was looking for where I could take my placement year, and the placement department told me, don't go to the US, you'll never get there, it's impossible, no one's gone before. Worst advice ever. Thankfully didn't listen to it and, made it happen. So.
Britney, your go-to karaoke song?
Oh man. I'm not much of a karaoke person. However, I'm known to belt it out when I'm in the car with my husband. So I tend to go to a Whitney Houston song. I really like to. I'm Gonna Love You Forever, I think, or I forgot the name of it. But anyways, I like to get the big crescendo part, and sometimes he laughs before it happens though, and it ruins it. So, but he's the only person that will ever see that.
Well, that's pretty good if you're going for Whitney Houston.
I mean, I don't sound like her, but.
We need to do karaoke together. I'd be so down for that.
Yeah, we have to get together and do
that.
Might
take some of your drinks first.
Minneapolis 2022. So I think we know everything there is to know about the two of you as individuals right now, and we didn't even mention Tourette syndrome. So let's fill in some blanks on what role it actually plays in your lives. Britney, let's start with you. When I gave your intro about the work you do, it really does wrap around Tourette syndrome and maybe disabilities in a broader way, but you've helped so many people, including me, see this so-called, disorder differently within ourselves. And you were way on the acceptance train ahead of me. Where did you get that inspiration from to be comfortable with yourself and explain it to people and feel confident? Because it took me a long time.
I would say a big part of that goes to my parents, my family. When I was younger and I was first diagnosed, nobody made it seem like anything else was happening. Like they didn't make it seem like a big deal. Like I remember even asking my mom later, like I don't remember anybody like reacting. And she basically told them like she didn't want them to. My mom was very big on not making me see the Tourette's, especially back then. I say back then like I'm old, but at that point, she would watch, like she would almost like vet anything that was on about Tourette's that she would watch and make sure before she let me watch it, because she didn't want me to watch something that just continuously told me what I could not do or what I could possibly not be capable of. And I attribute most of that to her. And then my father, he's always been his own kind of person. So, and he was always, him and my mom have just always taught me to be myself unapologetically, and that I just needed to learn as much about it. Like my mom and I, my family and I, we were our own advocates. We were the only people we knew with this. We didn't know anything about it. And my motto was always to myself, was always get to them before they get to me. So in school and everything, I wanted to tell them like, look, this is what I have. And that point, they already knew. So I didn't have to explain it after they whispered about me or stared at me or anything like that. And like if they wanted to be jerks about it at that point, whatever. But no, I attribute it mostly to my family. They have been the best support system anybody could ever have.
Well, Aidy, what about you? I know you were a lot like me in that you were slower to accept it. How did you finally get there and cross that line?
Yeah, so I would say that my childhood was pretty tough. I'd say that growing up, I looked at my my Tourette's, in a way that was almost filled with a bit of shame, because when it began, none of the medical professionals around here, none of the doctors, they really knew what it was at all. And so when I was in school, it was first looked at as just, bad behavior. And I do remember getting punished and sent out of the classroom and told to stop misbehaving. And, it took me a lot longer because of that. I'd say that there was a turning point when I got my diagnosis and started to understand it a bit more, but still, because of how I've been treated as a kid, I always felt that shame. And this all changed when I was able to move to San Francisco in a placement year at my university. And I met someone called JP, John Paul was his name. And, he's one of the most remarkable people you'd ever meet, so inspirational. And he himself had had a lot of hardship. He'd grown up in a Mormon family, he was married, he had kids, but within all of that, he was gay. But he was unable to come out because of the situation that he was presented in. And it took him until his mid-30s to finally kind of embrace it. And along with that, the whole church disowned him. He lost all of his degrees. He had to start again while still trying to support his family from afar. And he moved to San Francisco. That's where I met him. And this man was so humble. He didn't have much to him, but he was able to raise like millions of dollars for so many different charities during the time that I was there. And just so much love and humbleness to dish out to people, and he never wanted anything in return. So 5 years ago, we sadly lost JP, very tragically and very unexpectedly, and that hurt. That hurt more than anything that I had felt before. But within that pain, that there was a bit of a wake-up call. And that wake-up call really was, we only have so much time within our lives, so let's do whatever good we can do with that time. And I vouched that in his memory, I would try do whatever I could to help the world, which, a year later, I put my lack of confidence aside, I buckled up, and I began to embrace and tell my story about Tourette, just hoping that that story would be able to help other people. And I suppose I turned what had always been my biggest weakness into my absolute superpower. And now I look at my Tourette's and I think, do you know what? Without it, I would have never, ever gotten to where I was today.
Both of you have really powerful influences when it comes to how you compose yourself and accept it and live with it. But even living with it, you still have to, we can have bad days, days where we really need to find a way to manage it. Britney, a lot of us kind of think a lot alike. And so the toolbox of possibilities for managing Tourette is kind of scalable. Different people can use different things or different pieces of advice. Here's how I get through it in my day-to-day, the ticking or anxiety, depression, sleep, whatever it is. Is there anything in your routine that seems to directly help you with Tourette syndrome or any of its effects?
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from on the really bad days, calling my mom crying still at 31 years old. That one's a go-to for me. But exercise has really been a big help for me. When I was younger, I danced. I danced for 20 years. It was my favorite thing that has ever existed. I loved it. I didn't tick once when I was in the dance studio or on stage. No, most people didn't even know I had Tourette syndrome. Now, that's not to say a lot of people don't know still that are just meeting me, but I knew on a bad tick day, all I had to do was get to the dance studio. It was this freeing feeling, like those bad tick days, like that was my space where I finally got to move because I wanted to and not because my body was making me. And see, sometimes I get emotional when I even talk about it because that space was just so special for me growing up. I think that had a very big impact on me. And I don't think most of my dance teachers or anything even knew what it truly meant for me. Like I love being on stage too. To me, the best feeling in the world is being on stage in front of a bunch of people. Most people don't agree with that, but I love that. And so when I stopped dancing, because 20 years of dance takes a pretty big toll on your knees. And so I just couldn't do it anymore. And I started exercising. I found out that I kind of had a very similar experience. I still tick sometimes when I exercise, but not nearly as much. And I really do notice if I'm not, if I don't do it a lot throughout the week or go with my normal routine throughout the week, I'll have more ticks. Like it kind of gets just that excess energy out of the way, because I'm a very excitable person, as I explained myself. I'm a heart on my sleeve kind of person. My emotions, I feel how I feel, and unfortunately, I don't hide it. So when I get excited, it gets really bad. And, I just kind of take time for myself. I also, I do adult coloring books, really love those. And over the last year or two during quarantine, I got into the diamond paintings, which can be a little dangerous when you start taking with your hand, but when I really zone in, it really does help me. It helps me calm down a lot.
So you mentioned performance. Sometimes it sounds counterintuitive to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be looked at and your nerves might flare up, and that could, kind of get your ticks into kind of like a snowball situation. And Aidy, this definitely applies to you being on camera. Do your ticks edge up, or do you get in the zone, or what happens when you're doing something that puts you at the center of attention?
So, I mean, I'd echo what Britney said there about the dancing. Whenever I'm in front of camera, whenever I'm doing an interview, whatever it might be on stage, then my tics will pretty much disappear almost completely. And I guess it alludes back to what I said before about when we find that superpower, that thing that we love to channel our energy into, we can just absolutely fly with it. For me, it's the breaks in between. We do a big shoot, cameras rolling, action, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then we get to the point where we break for the next scene, the adrenaline's still there. That's when the tics will come out because I'm just sitting around. I have nothing to keep me occupied. So it goes up and down with filming, but when the cameras are on, when I'm in front of an audience on a stage, it's nearly non-existent at all.
So when you're having a particularly bad moment with tics, it's something that people, pick up on if they seem unfamiliar with you. Britney, how do you, is there, someone could easily just assume, why can't you just stop it or hold it in for a bit? Is there any way that you explain it to people to where it sounds kind of relatable, or a way that they might understand how, difficult it can actually be?
Well, there's definitely ways I've attempted to explain this, and as we all know, this is a very difficult thing to try and explain, especially when suppression gets brought up, because people think, well, you can hold it in for a couple of minutes, why can't you just do that all day? And I recently kind of talk about it sometimes, like, you know, a cough, a hiccup, or a sneeze. Like, sometimes you can feel it happen, that it's about to happen. Sometimes you can feel the tickle in your throat. Sometimes you know you're about to sneeze. Sometimes they come out of absolutely nowhere and you don't know that it's about to happen. And the more you try to not do it, like, for example, we all are probably trying not to cough in public right now because of everything happening. And the more you think about it, the more that builds, and the more you have to do it, and the worse it gets. And in one of my more recent videos, I even talked about it, kind of like came to me in the middle of it. It's almost like when you shake a pop, or a pop falls or something, and it's in the bottle. You see all that fizz, you see it building up and building up and building up, and then when it's opened and it's released, it's exploding out of there. And so therefore, the more you hold it in, the worse it's going to be later. And that's why I try to tell people, that's where I start to get into like tic attacks and everything else, and how much worse it's going to be. Even if I'm subconsciously suppressing, I don't realize that I'm necessarily, because I'm just so used to trying to do that sometimes, like work meetings, that kind of thing. The second I get in my car, or the second I would get home when I worked at the office, I would start taking, like, I would take way more right before bed, because I always tell them, like, it doesn't matter if it didn't happen earlier, it's gonna happen eventually. It's gonna find its way out of me, and I can't help it. Just like you can't help getting the hiccups or sneezing, I can't help moving my body.
Aidy, what about you? Have you had chances to explain it to people successfully?
I've got a couple. I love the shaking the bottle analogy. I think that that's a really good one. I'm definitely going to be using that moving forward. I tend to describe it like a mosquito bite, in terms of when you get a mosquito bite, it really itches, and all you want to do is scratch it. But the longer you hold back, and the more you hold back from scratching it, the more that urge is there. So you finally go ahead and you scratch it, but then it only comes back full fold, and just like it gets you even more. And what's really interesting is people say, oh, can you not just ignore it? You know, can you distract yourself? And I find that I tend to have two types of tics. Some where I can mentally like try and block it out as much as I can, and others where I just absolutely can't. And I guess that when I'm distracted, for example, watching TV or a movie or something, some of my tics will not be present at all because I'm concentrating on it. But when I get even a little bit more anxiety, or there's a horror scene or something happens and I'm a bit more edged up, you know, tics will just happen without me even knowing that they're there. Mm-hmm. So it's honestly, like, I would love to give an award to someone who can truly explain this for what it is. It's so very difficult to find a very accurate representation of it. There's so many different ones, but yeah.
Well, Britney, you know, I think when it comes to explaining ourselves and, you know, really kind of conveying it and getting it across, we have so many different ways of doing it now. You know, we're telling our stories, we're educating people, we're helping parents whose, you know, kids are just being diagnosed. We have so many different, you know, ways of getting the message out and different people to get it to. But we're still getting kicked out of movie theaters, and we're still getting, you know, what policy needs to be better. And I mean, do you think we're accelerating in the right direction? Do you think things are as challenging as they ever were, or, you know, do you have optimism about it?
Yes, so I have mixed feelings about it. I often find myself having to say, like, I feel like we're taking a step forward only to take two back sometimes. I feel like we've made so much progress, and I feel like the association itself has helped us make so much progress and help our voices get heard that much more. And I think more and more people are, I think this is where social media has kind of helped, and this is the part of the good part of social media, aside from, you know, always negative part. It's showing us more. It's showing us in more of our different realms of Tourette syndrome, or different severities of Tourette syndrome. And people are getting more open and more brave to share their stories. And I think that's what's so helpful, because it's starting to make people understand, like, well, that's not what they showed on television. And you can turn that into, for what I try to do is turn that into, like, well, that's the problem. we're not like what they show on television. And if they are, they're getting kicked out of movie theaters. They're getting kicked out of public places because people want to laugh at it when it's on their television screen, but then they don't want to believe when it's real right in front of them. And that's what's so frustrating to me. I have a lot of optimism. I think we're going in the right direction, 100%, but I can't help but to get those moments, you know, when you hear the politicians say somebody has Tourette's or a celebrity make those comments. I can't help but to get that blood boiling feeling in my gut, because that's where I feel like we've been doing so good, and then somebody has to say this again and we have to teach them all over again. But at the same time, after that blood boiling feeling goes away, like, it just reminds me, like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why none of us can stop, and this is why we have to keep sharing our stories and show we're all similar in having Tourette syndrome together, but we're all still so different. And like you said in the beginning, we're individuals still. We have Tourette syndrome, but we're very individualistic in our realms of Tourette syndrome.
Well, I mean, you're doing a really great job educating and, you know, making sure people understand what they need to know, including me. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was a little kid, but it was late in life that I decided to kind of start talking about it, and you're one of the first. And same thing with you, Aidy. I mean, being a public figure, I mean, there's a new level of excitement that builds in the community when they find out that a public figure or someone they, you know, like a famous person has Tourette or has experience with it or has it in the family. How has your life changed since you opened up about it? You've even written stuff in national publications about it. I assume people are reaching out to you. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I would say that what keeps me going is the fact that people do reach out. And I won't lie. So the first time I published something in the national media, I opened the paper, I read it, and then I broke down in tears because it felt like such a weight had been lifted off my shoulders and my heart, like so much suppression over so many years. And I finally, you know, just been truthful about everything. But what keeps me going is the fact that people get in touch and they explain to me their problems, whether it's, you know, kids, whether it's teenagers, whether it's adults, whether it's families who have someone who has Tourette. And it's such a beautiful feeling to know that what you are attempting to do is trying to help and you think it is working. I always say to people that I am on Instagram, and if they ever want to message me, then they should do. I will always respond whilst it's manageable for me to do so. And even when it becomes unmanageable, I will find another way. I will find a mechanism of allowing people to email in so the team and I can get together and we can respond to people, because you know, we're a community and we're in this together. And I think that we all need to do our part. And so has my life changed? Yes, in a very beautiful kind of way.
Well, that's perfect for the last question I'm going to ask you guys. It's going to be the same question for both of you. And I don't know if anybody on the back end knows if we have time for questions or anything like that, but just to ask this question, what do you think can happen if we continue to build this community, as you were referencing, Aidy? Right now, you know, we're at a conference, you know, virtually speaking, attended by lots and lots of people whose lives have been touched in a lot of different ways by Tourette. You know, some are really experienced with it. Some people are in the very early stages of learning about it. Some people might have just been diagnosed and that's why they're here. But what do you think the community aspect of Tourette has to offer? And I'll start with you, Aidy.
Okay. So I mean, this is quite an emotional thing to be able to answer in a way. And I alluded to it before, but I'd say what this is, you know, what we are, what every single person who is tuned right in is right now. And I say this to everyone, you know, we aren't just a community, but I look at us as more of a family. And we're a family who will defend each other. We will support each other. We will be there for each other. We will push forward for each other, despite all the hurdles that we face. And I don't just mean those of us who have Tourette's. I mean the families, the friends, the carers, all the people supporting us too. And when I began to get to know this community, what has become a family, something changed quite substantially within me. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. I felt the belonging. And so I guess what I would say is, no matter how difficult things get, to every single person who's watching, you know, you are loved, you are important, and more than anything, you absolutely belong. And never, ever forget that.
That's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Britney, what do you think?
Well, man, have to follow that up now.
Sorry.
No, I agree wholeheartely with everything Ade said. The building of this community is only going to help us that much more. It's going to have somebody, so like, for example, when I was younger, I didn't get to like get on social media and be like, hey, that person's like me. Like, they understand what I'm going through. And there are some, even though I have such a positive outlook on it, there are some times when it gets bad that I get in a very bad headspace still, because as much as I have all this support and my family loves me and my husband is wonderful, nobody understands it on that level because they just don't live with it, and it's not to their own fault. But I can now turn around and talk to one of my online friends about it, or I can see that other people get it and they understand, and there's somebody that I can go to if I wanted to, or if I felt the need to. And I think it's so important, especially for younger kids right now, and even adults that are afraid to admit that they have Tourette syndrome to somebody, to see somebody else doing it and to see like, hey, because people have told me that they're happy that they found a female talking about it, because as we know, it's more prominent in males, and that feels good. When I started doing this, I said if I could help, literally just if I make these videos and only one person ever watches them that's not a family member, and it helps them in some way, then I did exactly what I wanted to do, because I don't want anybody else to grow up and think that they're alone, because we're not alone. There's so many of us, and the louder we are, the more dominant we are with this, people are going to hear us, and people are going to realize that we're to be taken seriously, and that we're not just a joke, and we're not just the next punchline. And I think the more we show that, the more we might see television movies that show that the person just happens to have Tourette syndrome. They're not the punchline and the butt of the joke of the whole movie, but that character has Tourette syndrome, and they just show them as normal people, not somebody to laugh at the whole time. And I think the more we do this, the stronger and bigger this community builds. I think we are getting closer to that every day.
That's another beautiful answer. I feel like with everything we've talked about, we've covered so much. We've hit so many high points, and I think encapsulated a lot of the discussion that goes around in the community right now. But it's just a piece of it. You know, there's so much more to discuss, you know, and the conference is going to get to that. And I mean, it's a really amazing agenda. I want to make sure before we say bye to you guys that nobody out there has any questions. If you guys want to type any questions into the questions panel, you'll see a little chat box. If anybody's got anything. Okay, so we got one here. My son's Tourette can be so severe that he has physical pain from his tics. He can get so discouraged at times, which is so hard for a parent to see and not be able to fix. How can I help him? Brittany, any thoughts on that?
I would honestly say, for one, you reaching out and saying something like that, you're already doing an amazing job. Attending this in general to be there for your son is an amazing job. I know I've heard my mom say this same thing so many times, that she hates that she can't completely help me. But what I want you to understand as a parent is you doing this and you trying is helping, because they're feeling loved and accepted by you. Like, yeah, I'm emotional. Without my mom, I don't think I would be half of what I am and have gotten through this as well as I have. I knew, just knowing that she's there, like I said at the beginning, I can call her. I'm 31 years old, and I had a really bad, one of my worst tic days in probably a few years, about a month ago-ish, and I knew that I could call her, and just hearing her voice made me feel better, because I knew that she's just that comforting level for me. And sometimes she would rub my back. She would help me breathe and calm down when it got bad, when I got into tic attacks, because for me, I don't breathe very well, especially when I'm in a tic attack. And she has to, it sounds stupid, but she has to remind me, like, Brittany, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And she'll just repeat that to me and like kind of rub my back. This is what she did when I was younger. And it truly did help. Maybe the tics didn't subside completely, but just knowing she was there and that she's still there as an adult, that's helping. And I promise to the person that asked that question, you're helping.
Right. Yeah. Imagine the compounding problems from being in a situation like that, but also not getting love when you need it. You know, it's a lot of that is just such a great foundation, even if there's nothing immediately that you can think to do. Sometimes, I don't know. Ade, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, that was such a beautiful and well-spoken answer. I think at the end of the day, love. And I think that parents shouldn't ever forget also that it's not just the person who has Tourette that needs that extra support. And they themselves should also make sure that they have a comfort circle too, because we all too get wrapped up in just the person who has a diagnosis. And, as I got older, I found myself saying to my mom, make sure that, you talk to someone as well, because it can be just as hard in many different ways for the person who is our carer too. So love not only to your family and to your children, but love to yourself as well. Make sure you give yourself that time and that ability to keep your mind in a safe, nice place too.
So, kind of bouncing off of that, here's another question. What's the best way to speak to our children? What do you recall from a 13-year-old? My son and daughter get so upset when I bring it up. Thank you, and you are the best. So, yeah, what do you guys think about, being at that age? I don't think I always wanted it to be brought up. When I was maybe 13, 14, that was right around the time I stopped telling people I was having it or I had it. I mean, do you have any thoughts about this? Aidy, anything?
I mean, you know what? I went through exactly the same thing, to the point where it was referred to as the T word. I could not use it. Was like, for everyone who's watched Harry Potter, the word Voldemort, it was the same thing. I could not use that word because I just felt so upset and shamed about it. Now, looking back on my life, if I was a part of a community where there were other people and it was just totally normalized, and those people around me also had Tourette, or I had a pen pal who had Tourette, or I had Skype sessions, and at first it would feel a little bit, odd, because you're just not used to seeing someone else, which is an irony, because we ourselves go through all this, and when we see someone else for the first time, it's this whole new world. But it becomes normalized, and it's emotional intelligence. It's being able to see through your eyes someone else and what they're doing, then internalize that back into yourself, just knowing that it is a normal thing and there are other people out there who have it. You are not alone. And going back to what I said at the one of the last answers I said, belonging. And I know it is super difficult, especially when in the teenage years, because it is something so hard to discuss. But as I say, family, community, normalizing it as much as you can without bringing it up as a forced topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the difficult points of bringing it up to where it sounds like you're not, I wouldn't want to be hounded about something that I think about every day, and I'm not saying that that's the intention of the parent, but sometimes that may be how it is received when you're in a situation of frustration. I mean, I can definitely remember that. And Britney, I want to ask you this. Here's another question. When you get anxious, do you feel like your thoughts can't come out clearly or can't explain something? I can relate to that.
Definitely. Like I said, I'm an excitable person, and sometimes I can trip over my words, or I've honestly just realized over the last few years and come to terms and realize that I am an anxious person and have anxiety. I've always been this worried person. I've always known that. Brittany always worries, like it was just my thing. But when I started doing these videos, honestly, with people with Tourette syndrome and stuff, and we started talking about, and I hear more about anxiety, I'm like, this is actually what I have. It's not just me. Like, I used to just think I was a temperamental person, and I am, but like I would feel hot all over my body and my heart would race, and I would start to like really dislike myself from that happening. I'm starting to realize like those were me starting to go into like anxiety and panic attacks and not knowing that that's what that was. And it makes me start to realize that more and start to notice it a little bit better. Started going to therapy sessions as well, because I realized that I needed to do that as well, because I am sometimes, especially when the anxiety is taking over and I'm getting to get frustrated, and I'm a frustrated crier, as I always explain myself, and I really hate that. I can get very up in my emotions, and like I said, I get hot all over, and yeah, I can't explain what I'm feeling and what I'm trying to say and why it's bothering me so much, because it can be like the smallest thing, but I can't explain why it's bothering me. So yes, absolutely, that was my long-winded answer to that question.
Has that ever tripped you up with anything like scripted, Aidy, when you're doing lines for a camera or anything?
I mean, I'm so anal about when I'm on camera, no. However, I can absolutely, like, everything you just said calls so true to home. And last November was the first time I had a proper, like, anxiety attack. And I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was having an aneurysm. I even recorded a goodbye video to my family because I genuinely thought that I was going to die. And we had to call an ambulance, and I went to the hospital. And so it is scary. And I've been trying to do a lot more CBT and learning how to keep that anxiety down, but tripping over words, oh my gosh, like just in the general house, like, can you pass me that thing? What thing? The thing. I can't remember what it's called, the thing. You need to tell me what the thing is because I don't know what the thing is. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. And one thing I was taught to do, which has had quite a significant impact, is called the worry diary. And throughout our week, we often come across things that we worry about, that we're anxious about, silly things that, you know, mean the world to us, but it's actually something simple. And what I've been told to do is to write that down in a book and then do something right then and there to distract myself. And then you come back to that every night at 6:30 p.m. or sometime around there, where you spend 10 minutes in your room by yourself, just worrying about whatever you need to worry about. Then you distract yourself straight after, maybe with a game on a phone or something, and then go back. And if you can use that distraction technique with anxiety in the same way that we sometimes do with our tics, to be honest, then it lifts that burden from your mind. But anxiety is a real thing. And I think this year, especially with the situation of having, we call it lockdown. I know everyone calls it something different, but it has, oh my gosh, I think mental health will be taken a heck of a lot more seriously now by different health institutions because of what they've witnessed in the last year.
So, and you touching on anxiety attacks, you know, when they're happening, it's difficult to know what to do. Britney, have you experienced that kind of thing? And have you, I mean, I personally am kind of new with managing panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And for me, it's, you know, holding up like a chunk of ice to my face, or just something that shocks me and feels different for a minute. Well, do you have any sort of managing techniques when it comes to really tense situations like that?
Yeah, so I've recently been trying to really concentrate on like breathing techniques. I literally have at my desk right here, this is the desk I work at every day, I have a Post-it note of 3 separate breathing techniques to try and bring me back when I get frustrated or if I'm getting overwhelmed and stressed at work. My job is very stressful for me currently. And I do that. I usually search for one of my dogs. And my therapist actually told me that, so I have a stress ball right here on my desk too, that tossing it, like putting it from one hand to the other, is a calming sensation for people's minds. And I started doing that. I put my stress ball on my desk for that reason. So when I'm at meetings, if I'm getting overwhelmed or just anything, and she told me to do the same thing, like when I pet my dogs, as silly as it sounds, like she said, like one hand after the other. And I'm probably overly connected to my dogs, but so they help me. But yeah, I try. It's very hard for me to pull myself out of that moment, because it's almost like I'm fighting myself. Like, no, like I'm mad right now and I'm allowed to be mad. And then it's like the devil and the angel on my shoulder, like, no, calm down, like do your techniques. But I'm like, no, I don't want to always have to do this. Why do I like, it's this vicious cycle in my head. So I am still working through it, but definitely the breathing and the grounding techniques where you like name 5 things in the room, smells, colors, what you feel. That one really helps me out.
So here's a good question about the feeling of isolation when, you know, it's not, you know, especially if you live like I did, where I just didn't want to talk about it. It's difficult for me to connect with other people who have TS. So I kind of have this sense of isolation that's a little bit self-imposed, but at the same time, it's, what else do I do? You know, it's, how do I connect with other people and thaw out that feeling of isolation? What are your thoughts on that, Aidy?
I would say that the best place to start is somewhere which is super non-judgmental. And, you know, someone who is on, for example, Instagram, like ourselves, like Britney and myself, you know, just pop up in a DM, say hi, talk to us. We'll happily talk to you about what's going on in life. And if you're suffering from anything in particular, we'll give you some feedback based on what's, you know, helped us out. And people are all too often quick to be afraid to reach out and ask for help. And that is something that we it's our own stigma. It's something that we have to get over. And so it all starts with just reaching out to someone who you think will be in a safe place. And sometimes someone might not pick up your message, so just message someone else. And it's finding the courage to do it like in any other situation is what I'd say.
Yes.
I think we may have lost Ben. So do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I don't see him anymore either. No, I would agree.
Am I back? Am I back?
No,
I'm back. Go ahead.
No, I agree with what you're saying. And like you said, people have messaged me, and I always say, like, please feel free to reach out to me. I might not see it right away, or I might not be able to answer right away. You know, stuff sometimes goes to folders that I don't know exist. And so if you're waiting a really long time, that's why, I promise. But I am always willing to help the best that I can. I will share, and I'm always try to put it out there that we're all different, but this is what helps me. So go ahead and give it a shot. But there's so many advocates out there, and there's so many different things that we can try. But yeah, I'm more than happy to always talk to anybody that feels that. I don't want anybody to feel that way, ever. So I am more than happy to be that person to talk to you if that's the way that you're feeling.
So this next question that came in sort of focuses on the outside of the community. Says, as new parents to a son that was recently diagnosed with Tourette, what advice do you have as we navigate being supporters and champions for him with his teachers, friends, and family? Do you guys got any thoughts about that?
I mean, the first thing I would say is do not mollycoddle him. That's the word. Do not mollycoddle him. So do not keep it. I think you said him or her. I've forgotten which gender they were. But yeah, don't keep them too protected. Don't keep them too close. Honestly, I think it's important that we see a bit of the big bad world out there, because we have to get used to it. And there are going to be some upsetting days. There's going to be some tears. There's going to be anger. There's going to be frustration. There's going to be a lack of understanding. But you are much better allowing them to witness and see that now than keeping them in a closed place, so that when they get into early adulthood or college or university or whatever it might be, it becomes this, paralyzing experience that they're unable to accustomed to. So I think that would be one of my biggest pieces of advice. And there are going to be difficult days. You will have to kind of know that is on course. But
yeah, it's almost like the difficult days are going to happen anyway. It's nice to be able to, kind of carry something from it or have a takeaway. It's like the resilience that you build when you've gone through difficult situations and you have a sense of familiarity with them instead of it being a big unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's difficult to do. It's hard to see somebody go through a hard time. You do want to reach out and soften the situation. I'm not a parent, so I can't give any good advice, but those are kind of my thoughts on it. So here's one directed to all three of us. What is one thing you wish others would know about TS? And for me, I'll say, you don't have to stare, I guess. This is one thing I hear from a lot of people where people will take note of someone having, like very, I guess, visible tics and will stare, I guess, maybe with the intention of like, let's see if this person's okay. But someone just asked me this on a different podcast the other day about, what are they supposed to do in that situation? And I think my thoughts on that are, this is something that came from a guest on Tourette's podcast named Akiva, who said, if you have a concern for someone, you can ask them if they're okay, but only do it to make sure that they're okay. Don't do it to satisfy your own curiosities. That's something I wish other people would know. And I think that's you can kind of adapt that to anything,
Mm-hmm.
to have that sense of empathy, to know that maybe somebody has something going on that they're not too happy about. Maybe it's not immediately fixable, but we don't have to make them feel isolated and marginalized and awkward in the whole situation. I don't know. What do you think about that, Aidy?
I would say if there's one thing I want people to know is that there is a spectrum of Tourette, much like there are so many other illnesses, and people just put it in one box and think it's one thing based on what they've seen represented by the media. And we all go through different struggles, at different points in our lives as well. And, you know, I think one thing that I've found in the past is some people will say, oh, when you're on camera, it's, you know, it's not there at all. But then I'm thinking, you've not seen me behind the scenes, you know, and it's there's so much to it. It's not just one thing. And to just be a lot more understanding, in the same way that individuals will have autism and Asperger's, there is a spectrum to that disability as well. So that would be one of the most kind of pressing things. I mean, there's many things that I think people should know, but you asked me one, so.
Brittany, you got anything different? What's one thing you want people to know?
Well, I would absolutely 1000% agree with both of you. And kind of going off of what Ade was saying, I want people to know too that the severity level can also change literally from hour to hour in my day. It could change from minute to minute. It's not always going to be the same. You know, you see it, or I see it being said so much in the Tourette community, and things have been said to me. I have absolutely been accused of faking Tourette syndrome, which is something I would never do. It's the worst thing you can do. One of the worst things you can do. But I can be perfectly fine. And this is what I always I try to like explain to, especially to coworkers and at work. Like, for the most part, I'm fine. And you won't see me do a lot of stuff. You might see my face move a lot, and you'll hear me slam my mouth down all day. And that's just the way it is.
Oh yeah, me too.
But I need you to understand that later that day, like, I could be a lot worse, or that next day I could be a lot worse. And then the day after that, I could be completely fine.
Yeah.
And that's not because somebody's faking it. That's not because somebody's trying to make it more known. It's just the way that it is. Stuff could be going on in our personal lives that are making our tics worse. Because for me, stress and excitement are two of my biggest indicators of my tics. And it can just be so different, and it can literally change from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, and so on.
Apparently your one tick at a time shirt is in demand. Is there a place people can get one of these things?
Yeah, it is the One Tick at a Time shop, actually. You can find it online. You can find it on all of my social media stuff. So I don't have the exact, it's One Tick at a Time shop. You should be able to find it. So awesome.
Aidy, you have anything you can plug? Where can people find the Three Drinkers, by the way?
You can find us on Amazon Prime. So the Three Drinkers, the first series is all about Scotch, which you can probably see maybe 1 or 2 bottles behind me in our studio at 1 a.m. at 2 a.m. in the morning.
What about social media platforms other than Instagram? Where can people find you?
I mean, I'm typically on Instagram and a little bit of Twitter, but it's SYPPED, which should say sipped, but someone took the version with an I, so I didn't have much left to choose from. But so yeah, you know.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if anyone having watched this has any questions, wants to get in touch, I am absolutely more than happy to. As Brittany and I both said, it might take a couple of days at sometimes based on what's going on in life or which folders things go into. But please don't feel afraid to ask questions. You are more than welcome, and I invite you to.
Brittany, other web presences, YouTube, all that, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me mostly just under Brittany Wolf. Instagram is _Brittany Wolf, because again, Brittany Wolf was taken. So me on there. Most other things, Twitter, which I don't use very often, and Facebook, One Tick at a Time. It's kind of my little thing that I created came up with a few years ago. And then YouTube, Brittany Wolf. I don't stray too far, so it's easier. And that's BRITNEY, just so everybody knows. People spelled a little differently than the usual Brittany.
Gotcha. Yeah, and anybody can reach me. And same thing. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to reply, but I always aim to. There's a contact form at tourettespodcast.com, which is just starting its 7th season. Look tomorrow for a couple new episodes. I don't know if we still have time for. I have a couple other things here. Are we still good to go, people on the back end?
You know, you can take a few minutes. They're all yours.
So here's one. I guess this is more of a statement. It says, I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and this summer, my adult daughter began ticking, and it has gotten so much worse. she's getting all the best care I can find, but I'm just so angry that this happened. I treat people with these problems occasionally, but having it in the house and learning to live with it has been very hard. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Because I mean, you know, people have their routines, and people have people who aren't diagnosed with anything. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult to learn somebody's boundaries, or you know, what their preferences are, or you know, just fill in the blank. But when it comes to something like Tourette that's very pronounced, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? On how to kind of how do we coexist?
I think one important thing to remember is that it's more annoying for us. It's always important to remember thinking about that person doing it, because if it's, and I'm not saying this person's saying that it's annoying her, it's just I'm just putting it out there, that if it, because it can be, I've always worried that I'm annoying the people around me, and I'm a burden. I constantly think that I'm a burden to the people around me. It's having that open line of communication. Like, I think it's very important to sit and talk about, like, whether it's her daughter, I believe you said daughter, bringing it up, saying like, look, this is how I need this to happen, and I need you to respect that boundary of mine. Or it's them asking them, like, what do you need from me? Do you want me to pretend it's not happening? Do you want me to come and check on you? Like, because people are different. Sometimes they want people to check in and see if they're all right. Other people, they might just want you to never bring it up unless it seems like you're about to go into a panic attack, tic attack, anxiety attack, what have you. I just think it's because we're all so different. We all have such different levels of acceptance, especially if it's just starting out. They're probably going through so much in their head right now, because I can't really fathom this just now happening for me. So I can only imagine how difficult that is. Because for me, I've had this since I was diagnosed when I was 7. So as far as I'm concerned, my body has never been mine. I have never had the opportunity to decide what I do. So to feel that coming on, they're probably in such a scared and nervous and anxious place in their head. And it's just so important to see and have an open line of communication and be very clear and as calming as you can be for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think
you know,
I would. After you, Ben.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was saying, you know, a challenge is a challenge, but you know, there are hacks and codes and everything. But what do you think, Aidy?
I was going to say that also, as someone who's in your profession, you are so used to caring for other people. And just to echo what I said before, again, don't forget that you yourself need care sometimes. And I'm always quite a protector, and not protector, but how do I word this? I always go out and try and heal a lot of people, to the point where sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually need to think about myself right now, and I need to be a bit selfish for myself. I need to get my anxiety down. I need to do X, Y, and Z, or Z, as we say in America. But yeah, just don't forget about yourself as well, and spot on. Let them know that you're there for them in whatever capacity they want you to be there. And maybe try and speak to some other parents who have a child of a similar age as well, and see what their experiences are. And again, everyone's different, but just by doing that, you'll be able to kind of understand any tips and tricks that they have gone through that you can relate to as well. I've been spending too long looking at that amazing T-shirt.
Like tips and tricks. I think that could be, you're onto something.
That's a new thing.
Well, I'll just add real quick, because I think we're about to wrap up, but the Tourette Association also, you know, they have programming, YouTube videos, webinars, things like that. And sometimes these situations come up, or these topics come up, things for parents, things for kids. You know, it's a really good resource, and it's all on YouTube.
Yes, a wonderful resource to have.
100%.
I direct people to the association a lot.
This has been fantastic, really. I think we're at the end of the program, or the end of the kickoff, but you know, what's ahead is going to be really exciting. So Aidy, thank you so much, and Britney, thank you. This has been great.
Yes,
thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you to all of you, and to you as well, Ben. This has been a wonderful program. If you haven't yet, we encourage everyone to register for more sessions over the next 2 days for more wonderful, engaging conversations. Again, thank you so much to Ade Smith, Britney Wolfe, Ben Brown, Amanda Talty, and to Tim Howard for this terrific conference launch. We can't wait to engage with all of you more tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.